We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
There are so many reasons to travel. Apogee Travel is giving you a new one, and it's real good. With Apogee Travel, you get the same hotel deals as all the other booking sites, but now you can support charities you care about at the same time. You don't have to change where you go, what you do, or how much you pay. All you have to change is where you book. You pick your hotel deal, choose your charity to support, and enjoy your trip. Simple as that. Apogee Travel is changing the booking industry for good. Book your next trip and make a real difference at apogeetravel.com. Or download the Apogee Travel mobile app in the app stores.
Nothing hurts anymore. It's just, I am numb to pain at this point. The other half is trophy go.
It's the arrival. I came in the league, went straight for the title.
Intercepted! Rod Roar! And Michigan will win the game! Touchdown! Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvelous!
Hail, hail Michigan, the champions of college football.
There's nothing quite like the game.
Michigan versus Ohio State.
This is The Rivalry, proud to be part of the Varsity Network from Learfield and sponsored by Elevated Integrity Construction.
I'm just saying that this podcast gets less fun for me.
It's a great season.
Every single week.
It's a great season.
This is The Rivalry Podcast. Jace, JP, Michigan, Ohio State, garbage-free college football podcast from River Radio Ministries and presented by Elevated Integrity Construction. Sports talk without all the tangents, all about the greatest rivalry in all of sports. At RivalPod on social media and rivalpod.com. We are going to break the ice with a little bit of a wheel route.
We take 30 seconds.
I assume Donovan Edwards is on. I assume Donovan Edwards is on this wheel route, and Davis Warren just missed him. What was your question? Sorry.
I was going to say, can we take 30 seconds before we decide our next move, and then... Okay, most underappreciated player on your team. Who deserves to get a little bit more love?
By the way, if you're not watching on YouTube, at RivalPod on YouTube or right now, most underappreciated player on your team. Ooh. I think if you are a Michigan fan, this will maybe not be an unappreciated player, but Max Bredesen. Okay. Max Bredesen, I still can't tell for sure. Like, he plays the fullback position. I feel like he might even be listed as a tight end at some point, but he's essentially just the fullback, and he has been phenomenal. Anytime that you see, like, the most classic example of this year was the fourth down Kalel Mullings USC run, where Max Bredesen's back there and just smacks a guy at the line, creates that hole, lets Kalel Mullings get into the end zone. Bredesen has been around for a while, and he is a phenomenal player. He's not going to get the flashy stat lines, obviously, when you're playing that position, but Michigan, as difficult of an offensive output as they have had, especially late in the running game, any success Michigan had, particularly early in the season with the running game, and played a big role in this last year as well. Max Bredesen is to thank for a lot of that. So he's going to be an NFL talent. He's going to end up falling late in rounds because of just the position that he plays. But whoever ends up with Max Bredesen is getting an absolute gem of a football player and a gem of a human. So Max Bredesen.
This was hard for me, because there are there's three people total, one on the defensive side, and then there's two on the offensive side. And when I say the people on the offensive side, you're going to think they're not underappreciated, but it's the stuff that they're doing that doesn't really get the love that I think it deserves. So for defense, I'm going Cody Simon. Cody Simon right now, he's the second leader on the team in tackles. the block O recipient. Dude, every single game I feel like is right around where the action is all the time. Yeah. He's flying around the field. And he just, when you look at this defense, you see people falling in love with the Lathan Ransom, the Sonny Styles, the Jack Sawyer, JTT. You got Denzel Burke, all these other big name guys. And I feel like he's never really included in that. But the guy's been absolutely balling this year. And my honorable mention, because I do think he's the most underappreciated, Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson. But and
how is that
I
not?
Knew you were going to shake your head.
Says underappreciated.
Here's what
this is the best running back duo in the country.
No, thank you for admitting it, but this is what I specifically mean. They're blocking this season.
Okay.
And
we're back. Yes. And I'm back in because you're exactly right.
The blocking this season from both of those has just been there. Almost every single game, I feel like I see 3 or 4 different plays specifically where large chunk plays are brought off because of the blocks that those two are setting.
Yeah.
Travion has sat people on their butts so many times this season, and I just don't feel like that gets talked about because you want to see the flashy long touchdown runs or the crazy spin moves or whatever else, the dirty work that it takes to get those. There was a play, the whole last drive against Penn State, Quinshon Judkins sat some grown men down.
Yeah. Well, and especially if you are having an offensive line that has been better than I think people expected when you start stringing stuff together. It's still not a great offensive line. Let's be clear. It's still not a great O-line. That makes the blocking from your running backs in those positions that much more important to create space.
Gaps.
Yeah,
it has gone majorly underappreciated this season, so they're honorable mention for sure.
I have gone 5 minutes in this podcast.
Oh yeah,
and I need to ask. And again, this is why if you're not on YouTube right now, you need to be. Dare I ask why there is a Scarlet Knight helmet?
The vibes in Piscataway.
I mean, I know why, because if you're not familiar with the podcast, JP is inexplicably also a Rutgers fan, and that is clearly made for a child.
It does not fit my head.
I'm glad that you put the little like ear flaps down though, because
I'm not a fake fan.
Yeah,
Sir
you don't
Henry,
want to look ridiculous. That's for sure.
Yeah, Rutgers to the Rose Bowl. I mean, Kyle Monangai sat out this weekend. Kyle Monangai sat out this weekend. I thought, man, they're going to drop another game. They've played bad. They beat Minnesota,
which is great.
5 wins on the year. You've got Maryland and Michigan State.
Some teams would say that's a really successful
That's a pretty serviceable season. They got Maryland and Michigan State left on the schedule.
Can you please take that off? I can't.
It's a part of me. Honestly, I'm scared because it's stuck to my head. It's so small now.
Good Lord. We were talking before we turned mics on, and typically bowl games are not going to put conference opponents against each other, but because they didn't play in the regular season, we see Michigan Rutgers in the Quick Lane Bowl? You put it in Detroit, you know people are going to go to it. By people, I mean us. And so
that has to be a sickos committee bowl game if I've ever heard of it.
Let's talk about literally anything besides Rutgers.
Man, Ohio State.
Let's talk Ohio State because you played a JV squad this weekend and looked pretty good doing it.
Hey, second shutout of the year.
Yep.
I think back in the
what was the first one? Was it
Western Kentucky, and I think that was
Western
the first
Michigan.
Western Michigan, yes.
Yeah.
Kentucky was last season. Yeah. Western Michigan, a team Western something.
Directional Michigan.
Western Michigan, yeah. I think back then when they shut them out, it had been the first shutout the Buckeyes had in 5 years.
Which seems crazy.
They've had good defenses. And so now you're going into this year, you've got 2 under your belt. Yeah, I mean, what do you say about this? Gus Johnson was even extremely bored calling this.
So let's talk about that because here's the theory that I read right before coming in here, and this is just speculation, and that's what we're here for.
Conspiracy theories
is basically that was his way of protesting the fact that Fox keeps just gobbling up these ridiculous big noon kickoff games that are not remotely good games, and it was basically his way of being like, yeah, you can force me to be here, but you can't force me to do my best work for no reason.
Yeah,
like that's the only thing I can figure because he sounded
not
bored.
A great look.
He sounded bored out of his mind, and I get it.
But it's not. I was
bored out of my mind.
I was having a great time. It was not a great look from either. I agree with you. Fox News.
I mean, it could be. That could be it.
Shouldn't be a Purdue Ohio State game.
No, because here's what's going to happen, and this is not rocket science. This is pretty common knowledge. Like the reality is that Indiana and Ohio State are going to be big noon kickoff. That's not it. Now we're recording this on Monday morning. Nothing has been announced yet. Yeah. I'm telling you it's going to be big noon kickoff. And I think Gus or Joel even kind of at least indicated on the broadcast that they were going to be back in Columbus for Indiana. So like all signs point to another one, which that one makes sense.
Yeah, for
Ohio
sure.
State, Purdue.
That should have been on Peacock.
How about we don't do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you say about this game? Ohio State scored on 6 of their first 7 possessions.
Complete
Once
control.
they took Will Howard out, they didn't do as well. They still scored a defensive touchdown. Before the game even started, I put on the Rivalry Twitter at RivalPod. I tweeted out 3 things that I expected to see. I expected to see Jeremiah Smith go for 75 plus and a touchdown. He did that. I was expecting Quinshawn and Travion to go over 150 combined. They didn't together, but the whole team as a rushing attack did. And then I expected Ohio State to force 2+ turnovers, and they did, one of which Jack Sawyer goes and scores off of.
Yeah.
And Gus Johnson sounded like he would literally rather be anywhere else on earth.
Someone described
much
it as
like most of the Purdue team.
Someone described it as the tone fit for a funeral, and I was like,
Yes. Oh, man.
yeah, that's it. But also, like, I can't blame him in one sense. And again, that's where like there might be stuff going on behind the scenes where it's like I am sick of being forced to call ridiculous games because he can
blowout
because
after blowout.
he can tell that it's a money grab. We all know that it's why Penn State, Ohio State a couple weeks back wasn't a night game. It's because Fox has the rights to it, and they're like, let's make a big noon kickoff. Inexplicably. Cool. We got to see Penn State blow out Washington under the lights.
Yeah, I thought that would be a better game.
Wow.
I thought it would
fantastic.
be a better game. Horrible.
It doesn't make sense. Thankfully, this week, things really ramp up for Ohio State, and you get to play Northwestern at Wrigley.
I love that.
Which at least you're not playing like the Lakeside
I think it's 30 point dogs right now.
It is. Yeah. You're not playing the Lakeside High School Stadium holding 13,000. You at least get to play at Wrigley, which is
It'll be cool.
Fine. That's
cool.
great.
Northwestern's bad. Here's
This
the
is
thing
a
that I think is going to be
football team.
Here's the thing that I think is going to really help the Buckeyes as we get towards the end of the season.
Playing Northwestern
is I think what's really going to make the difference for this team down the stretch is the fresh legs of their running back room.
Yeah.
Because even this past week, Travion only had 6 or 8 carries or something like that.
Yeah.
And he had a phenomenal day. Right now, both of them are averaging over 6.5 yards per carry individually. But when you get down to the nitty gritty, when you get down to those playoff moments, who's going to have fresher legs?
Yeah,
like in those big games. I think that's going to be pivotal for them moving forward.
You're looking at playing, you're playing what, potentially 17 games? 16 or 17?
Because right now you've got Northwestern coming in. If you handle business, you're looking at Indiana and Michigan to close the year. Two really massive games.
You play 12 regular season games, maybe a 13th for a conference championship, and then 3 to 4 games in the playoffs. Potentially you're looking at 17 games.
And you're going to see guys that are getting bulk carries start to maybe get worn down. And so I think that's going to be something to look out for.
And that is, by the way, that is where playing teams like Western Michigan and Purdue and whatever else, like, I will continue to look at the schedule and go, brother, ew, what is what's that, brother?
If we're talking about schedules whatsoever, you got to throw in Alabama playing Mercer.
Well, oh my goodness. Well,
embarrassing.
This is the thing that, we've done this for 6 seasons now. Like, we harp on this every year. The SEC bye week thing where they play some random school from Nowheresville is ridiculous.
What's the mascot of that school?
Mercer? It's like a bear.
No, of Nowheresville.
Nowheresville? I don't know. A trash can probably. But regardless, okay. So you get Northwestern. This feels exactly like the Purdue game.
100%.
Copy paste. There is going to be. I don't know if unless you're really paying attention. It's one thing. Hear me. The Nebraska outing was atrocious.
Yeah.
Nebraska at 25-point underdogs is still somehow a much better, not good team, but a better football team than Northwestern at 30-point dogs.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that's just 5 points. Yeah, Nebraska and Northwestern are not on the same planet.
Northwestern does nothing well.
No.
The offense does not do anything. I think they average about 170 yards in the air.
It's just bad.
Not going to do it.
It's just bad.
On the ground, barely over 100 yards per game. Not going to do it.
Now, I will say, a couple years ago, was it 2 years ago now?
It was when it was really windy and stuff
the wind thing
at Northwestern.
So you're in Chicago.
If Mother Nature decides.
You're in Chicago. This is where maybe playing at the little lakefront high school stadium might have been helpful. Just get that nice. I grew up on Lake Superior. Okay, I get you get that lake effect stuff coming in. that might be their best hope is praying for rain, praying for snow, a windstorm.
It took them overtime to beat the Purdue
COVID,
that just
like
got
whatever
smacked.
you have to do to get out of playing this football game.
Yeah, to get out of playing the football game for sure.
If Northwestern can avoid playing Ohio State this weekend by any means possible.
If they could just take a book from Michigan and just say that they had COVID or something and then
that's probably
not have to play.
I mean, let's not belabor the point. 42-6.
We're close. 42-0. I think the Buckeyes get back-to-back shutouts for the first time in I don't know how long.
Northwestern just does absolutely, like, I mean, you said they do absolutely nothing well. And sure, like if somehow they put up a fight, we'll come back and say, hey, we're sorry about that. That's not going to be the case. No. And then, we won't preview it, but I'll say this, the only thing that is maybe negative about playing back-to-back weak opponents like this is then you have to flip the switch for whatever, and we'll get into Indiana, but for whatever people think about Indiana and whatever, the third highest scoring offense in the country. Doesn't matter.
Undefeated.
Doesn't matter what you think about. We'll get to them. Third highest scoring offense in the country. So coming off of Purdue and Northwestern, that is a flip of the switch a little bit. That's
and you got to play it smart too. I think,
and also maybe not a trap game given the fact that it's going to be a top 5 matchup. But the any game the week before the game,
and here's where I stand.
It gets a little bit iffy.
Here's where I stand, and it's my last thing on Ohio State. There's one thing I'm going to gripe on a little bit, and then two things I guess you could say. So
gripe away, man. We have nothing else to talk about that
there's
game.
There's not a lot, but if
Ohio State by 1,000.
If I'm going to be nitpicky about, and I'm talking more so the Purdue game, looking ahead to Northwestern.
Yeah.
Will Howard had another pass.
What?
It was supposed. That was for Laurel, and I appreciate
your wife
that.
is the one who did that. Okay,
she is. It's her fault, and I should never have told you guys that joke because now every time
I hear it on the broadcast,
and so. But there's been a few times, and it happened again this weekend, where Will Howard has gone to throw a deep pass, and he just hasn't connected. He's either underthrown it or barely overthrown it. It happened. And this wasn't his fault, but the Penn State game, you had the Jeremiah Smith drop,
which he should have caught. He should have caught. But it wasn't a perfect. It wasn't a great. It was a
good enough catch that most receivers would get that. And I think Jeremiah Smith, given his talent level, normally catches that.
But you're right. It happened again this week.
It happened again this week with Carnell Tate. Those are the moments you've got to be able to hit on in the crucial moments of big games.
Yep.
You're able to miss those, and against a Purdue, against a Northwestern. Against Indiana, those are things you can't leave on the field. That would have been a surefire touchdown to Carnell Tate. And in a game against Indiana and a game against Michigan and a potential Big Ten championship,
moving
you
forward,
can't miss those throws. Those are the things that separate a great quarterback to an elite level. I don't think Dylan Gabriel misses that throw. I don't think Cam Ward misses those throws. That's what takes you to the next step. The other thing, and it's very small and it's more so anxiety, is when the game's out of hand the way it was against Purdue, I don't care. You don't have to do anything to solidify me as a Buckeye fan to blow them out 50-something to whatever. You don't have to win 45-0 for me to know you're a good team. Once the game is in clear control, get your starters that mean something to you the heck out of there. Because the last thing we need getting ready to go into Indiana is Will Howard, who's the most important person to this team in my mind, going down with an injury because you decided in a 38-0 game to keep him in for some more drives. I don't care. People are going to scoreboard watch, say whatever they want to say. The second you get a 20-something point lead and it's into the second half of the game, unless you're playing somebody that really, you can put them back in if it gets close for whatever reason. But once you're clearly driving, you're in the driver's seat, you're rolling, you're on cruise control. Get them out of there. And for the love of God, do not put Devin Brown in the game. Well, that is not what I'm saying.
I don't remember what point it was last year, and it wasn't quite the same scenario because I don't think it was a blowout yet. But wasn't there a play last year where Kyle McCord was either left in a game or like they chose not to kneel down or something? And he ended up being fine, but like took a big shot and looked like he was going to be hurt.
It was
late. It was in November though. Like it was late in the season. I think.
I can't remember who it was.
I don't remember the exact scenario, but that's the sort of thing that you're afraid of, right?
Yeah.
Somebody, I mean,
you're going into,
you can step wrong. A guy like these are massive athletes running full speed. Like you can, this is why you have like no contact injuries in practice, right?
Well, it's like you're talking about going to Chicago where it's rainy, it's windy. You don't know what the field is going to look like.
Right? Which by the way, Can we talk about how horrible Ohio State's turf is?
It almost happened with Will Howard already this week.
He complained. I mean, I saw the Ohio State beat guys talking about this. So like, this isn't new information if you're in that world, but Will Howard talking about like, oh yeah, I'm going to change cleats because like it's blah, blah, blah. I'm like, he said something about it's making him look unathletic. I'm going like, I mean, I still think people think you're athletic. It's just one of those things where it's like, this has been, is it slit turf? Is that what it is?
Yeah, I think that sounds right.
Whatever it is,
right.
like it has been a perpetual problem where I've seen folks joke about, hey, great tackle there by the Ohio State field.
Yeah.
That's
player.
That's a concern, right? By the way, we saw this. I don't know if it's the same. I'm not a nerd like that, but Michigan up at Washington earlier this year, where we saw a couple of plays where Jair Hill just fell over. We saw Donovan Edwards had a big gap to hit the hole. He slipped and fell. By the way, the safety that was going to meet him about 20 yards on field also fell. Like stuff like that does matter in games. So you're not going to change your field in the next 2 weeks.
No.
You should moving forward.
You
should moving forward, by the way.
Yeah, and when you're looking ahead at like an
that's
Indiana,
why you gotta be
Michigan,
careful.
You just at this point in the season with what you have going on the table, you just can't risk it.
Be smart. You have to be smart.
You cannot risk it. So if you're up at Northwestern and it's a 30+ point game, I don't care if it's the midway through the second quarter.
Yeah.
I want to see them all gone. I want to see Julian Sayin. I want to see Aaron Noland.
Yeah.
Anybody but Devin Brown, honestly.
And again, if we're talking about keeping guys fresh, keep guys fresh. Hey, on social media at RivalPod, we mentioned this already, but rivalpod.com, chance for you to see photos from the games that we're covering, chance for you to see our weekly articles, and a chance for you to support the podcast if you want to as well. JP's got one of the rivalry shirts on today.
Yeah.
We've got them for Michigan. We've got them for Ohio State. You can get yours right now, rivalpod.com. Just click on support. And if you're going, hey, I've got the t-shirt, or hey, sure, it's not really my thing, but I appreciate what you guys are doing, want to support you. There's a buy me a coffee tab there, which basically is just a chance for you to say, hey, I want to give X dollars to the podcast, help you guys out. We've got postseason plans coming up for Ohio State, in all likelihood.
Why not Michigan?
I don't remember. But we've got some postseason stuff coming up, and with a small budget, every single dollar matters. So if you love the podcast, you want support that way, rivalpod.com. We really appreciate it. Maybe you feel a little bit like Sharon Moore in Michigan.
How bad does this hurt?
Nothing hurts anymore. It's just, it's half. We'll get back to the sponsor in a moment. Half of it is, I am numb to pain at this point. The other half is trophy go, and so it's fine. I will tell you, a national championship heals many wounds. Not all of them, but many. But maybe you feel like Sharon Moore in Michigan. What you're doing is not working, and you need to transfer in some help, probably in the form of a quarterback. Our friends at Elevated Integrity Construction are the portal, Sharon, the portal to a successful project. Aaron Carroll and his team, they've been doing this a long time. They communicate openly and honestly. Will leave you wowed at the finished project. Home, church, or business build, go with the folks with integrity in their name. ElevatedIntegrity.com. Also proud to be part of the Varsity Network this season, powered by Learfield, and a must-have for every college football fan. Free to download in the App Store and Google Play Store. You can enjoy live college football games and podcasts just like The Rivalry. Search for your school or The Rivalry podcast in the Varsity Network app to find tailored content. I don't want to talk about Michigan anymore.
Well, I can't wait. Okay, that's fine. I can handle it.
I'll talk about Michigan a little bit.
No. I got a lot to say.
This feels a lot like coming off a 20-15 loss to Indiana. This feels a lot like the Oregon game analysis that I gave. So if it's like, hey, this feels really familiar, that's because it basically is the same notes. Yeah. It's rinse and repeat. Let me start with a positive for Michigan overall. We'll get into the negatives on execution. We'll get into the coaching for sure. At the end of the day, like Michigan has the ball, despite everything else that happened. Here's the positive you can take away if you're Michigan. Despite everything else that went on, you had the ball with the chance to go win the football game on the road. You had the chance to upset a top 10 team on the road, full complement of timeouts with the football. This wasn't even in the Oregon game where it's like you were in the game late, but it was just out of reach.
Yeah.
This game
nobody thought during that Oregon game that Michigan was going to win.
Michigan
had many moments.
Michigan had not just opportunity. Michigan had the ball with a chance to go win the football game.
Mm-hmm.
So you can be happy with that. I think that on the defensive side of the ball, particularly in the second half, you can be really happy with that. Michigan gave up 3 points in the second half, which, by the way, this is now a trend here. And so, while I still don't think Wink should have a job at the end of the year, because I don't know if you realize this, but games are 60 minutes, not 30. Michigan's second half defense against both Oregon and Indiana has been really good. They gave up 10 points to Oregon in the second half a couple weeks ago, 3 points to Indiana this week.
Mm-hmm.
You can be happy with that. 4 sacks in this game. You can be happy with that. This
8 tackles for loss.
8 TFLs. Yeah. Again, we'll talk about, what is Indiana actually made of? This is an undefeated team in the top 10. You are 2 touchdown plus underdogs
at home.
So you can take those things and feel positive about that. Dominic Zavada, again, continues to be a weapon for Michigan. 56 yards in this game.
What was the record that he broke? It was like 5 field goals.
Yeah, it's the most field goals, I think, from 50 plus in a Michigan career. He's done it in 10 games.
Season. Yeah.
You know, so that's impressive. The reason I hesitate on that, by the way, is I'm still kind of riding the high of the Lions comeback last night, where Jake Bates had a 58-yarder to tie it and a 52-yarder to win it. So anyway, go Lions. The Lions salvaged my football weekend once again. God bless Dan Campbell. So those are the things you can take away that are good. But once again, for Michigan, the coaching staff, I am going to place this game squarely on the shoulders of the coaching staff. They failed these players again.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reality where, Davis Warren did not play a good football game.
No.
There's not a lot of on the offensive side of the ball that I go, oh yeah, they played a good game. Colston Loveland would be the one. And yet at the same time I go, yeah, that's part of it. But also you as a coach continue to have to set your players up for success. You have limited talent on this roster, especially on the offensive side of the football. Same thing we said last week. There's a difference between lacking talent and misusing in criminal ways the talent that you have. There's 1,000 examples here. Here's a few of them. And Michigan fans, just hold on to your butts for a second, okay? Michigan had the ball in plus territory. It was 4th and 4, 4th and 3, plus territory. Takes a delay of game
on purpose,
and then punts the ball. I want to say it was 17-3 still at this point.
17-3. That was my first note.
What are we doing? There's a lot here, so hang on. One of the most egregious ones was the goal line sequence that resulted in a field goal.
That was my next one.
3 plays. You're inside the 3-yard line now. And inside the 3, it was 17-6 at this point?
No, it wasn't even. It was 17-3.
Was it still 17-3?
17-3. And you guys did 3 straight runs from the IU 7, then kicked a field goal, cutting a 2-score game to a 2-score game.
You're kicking field goals down. Thank you for the score on that. You're kicking a field goal down 17-3 from inside the 3-yard line. What in the world are we doing? The other one too that I'll mention as far as hey, what are we doing in play call is the opening drive for Michigan, where Michigan, I don't know what happened in that first drive for the Wolverines, but Davis Warren executed a near perfect drive. Michigan gets the ball. Michigan has just stopped Indiana's offense. First off, gets the ball, drives straight down the field, and they look good. And then Michigan gets near the goal line. Davis Warren is on fire. And Kirk Campbell pulls Warren to send in Alex Orji to hand the ball off to our 3rd string running back. And by the way, that's not a knock against Benjamin Hall.
No,
I think Hall is actually a really good running back. But why in the world are you pulling the quarterback who is, again, this is going to be your guy. He is playing well. Let the man go, to yank him for the running quarterback who is just handing the ball off, and then is handing the ball off not to Kalel Mullings, not even to Dunn, but to Ben Hall. It's this type of just unserious coaching that is driving me insane, because that's not a talent issue now. That's a coaching issue.
Well, and it's easier to swallow a loss when you're losing because you're just not the better team. But
and to be
feels
clear,
like every
Michigan
single
is
week,
probably not the better team in this scenario.
I don't know. And that's from an Ohio State fan. I picked them as my stupid genius pick last week, and I wrote down a handful of notes.
It just doesn't.
There have been numerous times this year that I'm watching these Michigan games and I'm going, Michigan is in this. They have every chance to win this game, and the coaching has failed them. You already mentioned the down 17-3, 4th and 4 in Indiana territory. You take the penalty on purpose and punt. Egregious. Then you go down, you're 17-3 from the IU 7, 3 straight runs, kicked a field goal.
You can't do that.
Fireable.
You can't do that.
Then you're down 17-6, and it's a 3rd and 6 from the Indiana 39. And the play call was to do a running play with Khalil Mullins that netted 1 yard, and then you punted. Why are you running the ball on 3rd and 6? Then to put Khalil Mullins in midway through the second quarter. He did not see the field until the 7-minute mark of the second quarter.
And here's what Sharon said about that, in case you missed it. Sharon said, yeah, we're trying to run with the hot hand.
Khalil Mullins has been the hot hand the entire season.
His argument was that Don and Ben Hall had practiced better. I literally don't have words for that.
That's one of the things where if I'm a Michigan fan, I'm starting to shake my head.
That's egregious.
Well, and then at the end of the game,
I'm sitting there going, because people were understandably, the Twitter folks are up there going, is he, he wasn't on the injury report.
Something happened pre-game.
Did he, I was also going, well, maybe it's like a team rule thing where it's like, hey, he broke a team rule and he's not playing the first quarter. Maybe he's sitting the first half. Stuff like that. That's going to be handled internally. I'm going, okay, like I'm cool with that. But then all of a sudden he shows up with 7 minutes to go in the half, and I'm going, okay, so there was really no darn good reason why he wasn't on the field.
Well, and it's stuff like
that. Except you thought that the hot hand
was the 3rd string running back. Well, so you're looking at that, and then towards the end of the game, you guys still had a chance to get back into it. Indiana has the ball. They run a play, and then he lets 30-something seconds run off the clock before he calls a timeout. And then when he's asked about it, he says something along the lines of, well, we were discussing what the next call we were going to play.
It's absolute nonsense.
If you are the leader of the Michigan Athletic program and your head coach of a blue blood football program comes out and says that, here's the thing, and then I'm done talking about this trash team. So for all the talk about Ryan Day being born on third base, which we've heard ever since Urban Meyer left, Ryan Day has sustained the program. He might not win some of the big games. You can harp on that, whatever. We've sure as heck gone into it.
He hasn't done anything.
He has continually let this team be a top team in the nation year in and year out. It has been well past when Urban is gone. He has been here long enough to recruit his own guys, bring his own guys in. He has still been a successful head coach with a blue blood program like in Ohio State. Sharon Moore lost a lot after Harbaugh. I'll give him credit.
Yeah.
But I think, and I've watched every Michigan game this season, so I feel like even as an Ohio State fan,
I'm sorry about that. But as a Michigan fan, I'm sorry about that.
Well, I'm also a Rutgers fan. I've seen some trash. I've seen some things.
You wouldn't survive in the asylum where they raised me.
The Chris Ash era, and so
can we just
a moment of silence. Okay. But I'm looking at this and I'm seeing all these people talk about how Ryan Day is born on third base, and I wanted to give Sharon Moore some credit because Michigan lost so much. It's fair to say that nobody expected Sharon Moore to come out and win a Big Ten championship this season. But you've seen time and time again, this Michigan team is capable of winning. They were capable of winning this game, even though I felt like Oregon still would have been on top. You saw glimpses of this could be a good Michigan team.
This is a team right now that does not deserve to have this record. So don't hear that, okay? Because that's going to be some USC type stuff. They are better than what
their record shows.
This team could, I don't even know if I'd say easily, because again, that feels like Lincoln Riley type stuff. This team could be 8-2. Washington was winnable. Illinois was winnable. Indiana was winnable.
And those are three crucial games. If you guys
does that season not feel, and again, we're not playing the ifs, ands, or buts. Those are all very reasonable things that Michigan could have done. By the way, though, if you're going to play that game, you also could have lost to USC. You also could have lost to Michigan State. Okay. So balance
which is fair. Those are valid. But I think if you're looking at Sharon Moore, I think we were kind of fooled last season because after the 3 games where he was the interim head coach, he went out and outcoached the people he was going against, and that would include Ryan Day.
Yeah.
I felt like he did well with the talent, and maybe that was partially due to the assistant coaches. I mean, Jesse Mentor was just phenomenal. He's got the number 1 team defense in the NFL. I mean,
probably because he knows the signs. That's probably it
for sure. But you look at stuff like that, and I just think if we're going to talk about a guy that was born on third base, let's talk about the guy that was born on home plate. He's going in there.
That doesn't make any sense.
He's going in there.
That doesn't make any sense.
He's taking over a blue blood program that just comes off a national title. You're supposed to still, if you're truly building a program, sure, you've got some younger guys, but you still should have talent to be competitive. And he's just underutilizing. He's not hiring the right coaches. There's numerous times throughout the season that I'm scratching my head going, Sharon, what in the world are you doing here? And we've talked about it for the past 3 or 4 weeks on this.
No,
where we're looking, and he just looks so inept at that position.
You are dead wrong and dead right at the same time. You're absolutely correct that he looks out of his depth.
He's way over his head.
The coordinator shift has been atrocious. And again, some of that is also, let's place a little bit of blame on Harbaugh there too. Not even blame, but like let's acknowledge the situation and say
part of the process
and say one of the disadvantages, we talked about this before, one of the disadvantages to winning a national title is that postpones all that offseason stuff until after that, right? Mm-hmm. You would accept that 10 out of 10 times, by the way. I will take a 6-6 season 10 out of 10 times if we're coming off a national championship. Hands down, not even close. But that put Sharon in a difficult position already because stuff had to shift quickly.
Mm-hmm.
The Kirk Campbell promotion, I think everybody was good with. Kirk had been fine. He is not in the right chair right now. The Wink thing, I think everybody was already a little bit apprehensive about, but you were kind of forced into that here. So that's where I'll agree with you and say Sharon Moore looks absolutely out of his depth. I completely disagree with you. Trying to make the comparison between born on third base and the home plate. I've seen this around Ohio State stuff. It makes no sense for exactly the reasons that you already laid out. The born on third base piece was Ryan Day coming in, inheriting this juggernaut that Urban Meyer had built.
But he sustained it.
What has he won?
He sustained it every single year. They are competitive. They are, and somebody mentioned it this weekend, and I know how you're going to spin it.
What have they won in the last 5 years?
I know how you're going to spin it. I know how you're going to spin it. But it was talked about this weekend when it came to Ryan Day. He has been, the games that they have lost have been to people that have won the championships. And it's been by a slim margin. They've been right there. They are plays away from getting it done.
But what's the goal at Ohio State?
The goal is to win, and you're not wrong there, but you still have to sustain it. So if Ryan Day comes in and takes over that program and starts bringing in terrible recruits, and we're not competitive, and we're losing 2 or 3 games a year or whatever.
But that's not what Sharon's doing. Sharon has not had a chance to recruit, and the recruiting that he's done this year has been fantastic. So saying that he's born on third base or he starts at home plate,
it's different.
He inherited a bare cabinet. Everybody in college football knows that.
So he inherited that on Harbaugh for recruiting?
No, I don't know that's on Harbaugh.
I think it's on Ohio State.
I think on the quarterback side. Harbaugh is absolutely to blame, or whoever is in charge. And maybe that's Kirk, maybe that's whoever. Michigan is culpable for the fact that you do not have a quarterback in this locker room right now.
You're missing a lot of stuff.
But I'm saying if we're talking about Sharon's to blame because he was born here and look what he's doing. No, he inherited an empty cupboard with no offensive coordinator, no defensive coordinator. However many dozen starters are not there.
But here's the thing. He's had his team in games and he's made boneheaded moves that have cost them.
But that's different. Those are two different things. There's a difference between, hey, I inherited a juggernaut and I just trash it. That's not what happened. Versus I inherited an empty cupboard and that's kind of its own thing. Draw a line. And I'm in over my head. He is absolutely in over his head here.
I think it's both true.
Here's the thing for Michigan fans, that Sharon's not going anywhere. Okay. He's going to have at least another year. And I've said on the pod, I'm not even sure that I'm not okay with that. What I'm not going to be okay with is Kirk Campbell having a job by the time December 1st rolls around. As soon as that Ohio State game's done, Campbell should be gone.
So how many years realistically for more? Until
I think a lot of it depends on who you hire.
Like if he comes back next season and it looks the exact same, are you done?
Then I think you gotta be done. Yeah, I think so. Because I don't think I think you have to take into account all of what was going on.
What's his deal? You have to how many years is he technically signed?
I couldn't even tell you. And that's terrible.
I thought it was 3. I thought it was 3, but
like that's wrong. Where you can't discount. Like it's not like he inherited. If he had inherited last year's roster and was doing this, but that's very different.
You've said it numerous times. They still have so much talent and it's being underutilized.
It is absolutely.
Offensively, I'll give you a little bit of a pass because you lost a lot of your offensive line. And I think still, in my mind, you still don't have a number 1 or a number 2 receiver.
I agree.
You have the best tight end.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't classify him as a receiver. You don't have a real threat in the receiver group.
I agree.
And to me, that is recruiting. Running back, you have Donovan Edwards.
But whose fault is that?
I'm not blaming that all on him. I'm saying it's Harbaugh for that.
He's sitting here with a team that has been forced into starting 3 quarterbacks this year with no clear receiver.
We just mentioned a handful of games that we both kind of think Michigan should have won against good. Yeah. I think Washington would have been a huge win.
Yep.
I think Illinois, obviously they were ranked, would have been a huge win. And Indiana would have been massive. There, yeah. And they were all right there. And, and they didn't lose that game because of the talent that apparently they lost. They lost because of coaching.
You will have agree. You'll have no argument from me on the fact that coaching is hurting this team. We'll disagree. We're going to disagree on what he inherited, because I think it's clear he inherited very, very little. But all that being said, whatever he inherited, what the coaching staff is doing right now is egregious, and there's no other way to it. The other one, and I don't want to go back to all this, but like we gave you a whole bunch of examples of how this coaching staff is failing this team. Here's the one other one that I want to bring up is when Warren was struggling and they kept him in there, which is fine. It's good. Mm-hmm. He had a completion near I think it was near the 40-45. He had a 3rd down completion and it was like, okay, he's getting that. This was the second quarter. He's getting some confidence back. That was a big, when the quarterback's in his own head, and it was clearly in his own head. He has a big completion. You're going, all right, that's a big confidence builder. Let's get the drive moving. Come on, here we go. He immediately gets pulled, and Alex Orji goes in, and Alex Orji subsequently fumbles the football. It feels like Kirk Campbell is just flipping a coin to decide, when am I going to insert the Alex Orji package? That's the type of nonsensical stuff that there are situations where that package works well. I thought during the Michigan State game, they used it very well. But when a quarterback who's struggling gets a big completion, that is not the time to pull him back out of the game. Mm-hmm. That stop-start thing, it doesn't make sense, and you pay the consequences for that. Yeah, Alex has got to protect the football, 100%. Why is he being inserted in that situation? And on top of that, let's go all the way back to the coaching thing one more time. On top of that, Sharon Moore challenging the play for not being a fumble. The man is standing up. That is 2 weeks in a row now. Yeah. 2 weeks in a row. I don't know whose job it is. The advisor
that's marking down, telling him to throw.
Whoever is in charge of doing that and saying, hey, challenge that. Sharon's going to listen to him. Okay, so there's culpability for Sharon, but whoever is in charge of looking at the play going, yeah, let's challenge that. And I get that Sharon is trying to not throw coordinators under the bus, right? He refused to hold Campbell accountable for that Samaj Morgan pass to Alex Orji thing last week. I hope he's holding him accountable in meetings somewhere, but we're not going to, blah, blah. I get he's trying to kind of not throw somebody under the dang bus, Sharon.
Yeah.
I am sick of this. Well, I'm trying to fight for my kids. No, say, it was a bonehead decision and we're going to take care of it. I am sick of the introspection. Well, it starts with me. We know who it starts with. Hold your staff accountable. So Kirk Campbell should be gone December 1st. Wink should join him. Sharon gets another year in my mind because he's got a chance now to spend a full off season doing his stuff,
see what they do in the portal,
putting pieces in place. What does the portal look like? Who do you bring in as the OC? Who do you bring as the DC? If you do choose to move away from Wink, which you should, all that stuff matters. Michigan has a bye week this week. Thank God. I'm taking the bye week.
That's fair.
I'm taking the bye week because this team also just cannot seem to get healthy. And so I think the last thing to talk about for Michigan.
You get to take Northwestern on when you guys get back. So
great. As I was telling you before we recorded, and then I want to make one more comment about Michigan on the health front. I want Michigan to beat Northwestern, obviously. I want them to beat Ohio State, obviously. Finish the season 7-5. Please opt out of a bowl game. I'm sorry. I do not need to see any more of this. You don't even want to see
the young guys?
Yeah.
That's the only good side of it.
Also, if we're being honest, it's football. But there's a part of me. That goes,
you get one more game. But yeah, you're right.
There's a part of me that goes, I have seen enough of this.
You guys are going to make a bowl game. You're going to beat Northwestern.
Let's hope, man.
And so you'll go in with 6 wins. You'll play in I don't even think you guys make the Pop-Tart Bowl. What do you have to be for that?
If we make the Pop-Tart Bowl,
you got to go.
I'm going.
You got to go.
Yeah, I've seen Duke's Mayo Bowl thrown out there. Yeah. I've seen ReliaQuest Bowl thrown out there. It doesn't matter. Whatever.
None of the key guys are going to play. You're going to see maybe a Jaden Davis, though.
The last thing that I'll mention for Michigan on the health front is a lot of talk about Will Johnson and a lot of speculation around, has he packed it in for the year? What does this look like? And the answer is nobody knows.
Yeah.
I pushed back a lot a couple weeks ago. We had somebody over at Rival Pod on Twitter talk about, well, Will's just packing it in. It's a bad look. And I said, no. Being out again this week, I started to drift back into, you know what? He might be packing it in. And then Sam Webb, who is a Michigan insider, he's on the ground, Schembechler Hall. Like he knows, he's a guy that knows stuff far more than I'm ever going to. He said this week that the initial prognosis or the initial timeline for Will Johnson internally was after the bye week. And that does collaborate with what Sharon had said, I think last week's presser, something like that, where he said, yeah, he might not be back for the Oregon game. We expect him to be back this season for sure. That would line up. Now, will we actually see him against Northwestern? Who knows?
But can you blame him?
Will we actually see him against Ohio State? Who knows? I mean, I don't know. If you're supposed to be one of the leaders of this team, deciding to pack it in when you've got guys like Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant out there too, who are also going to go high in the draft, guys like Colston also going to go high in the draft, I have a problem with that.
But if he already had an injury,
and it depends, and that's where I'm not going to play doctor, because it depends on what is the injury. Somebody had said like a turf toe injury.
I'm with you. I think if you're able to play, it just, to me, it's a respect thing. It makes me lose a little bit. And I think NFL teams look at that as well. And that I think you try to preserve your draft stock. But in my mind, if you're a GM, it kind of hurts.
And the reality is, who knows? If he's packed it in for the season, I mean, he leaves a national champion. What more could you want for a player? It does leave a bit of a bad taste in my mouth if I go, you're probably healthy enough to play. But also, like, I'm also not being faced with being a top NFL draft pick making millions of dollars either. So like you got to take that into consideration.
The top corner
here,
in the
right?
draft.
Easily,
for sure.
Easily top corner in the draft. And you may see him nurse it for one more bye week. You may, and this was Sam Webb's perspective, you may see him try and give it a little bit of a go, kind of get warmed up in the Northwestern game, and you may see him full send for Ohio State. If you're a Michigan fan at this point in the season, I'll take that. I'll take, hey, walk it up. Give me your absolute best for that game. That's what the season hinges on at this point, right? That's the only thing you've got left to play for. And it's a whole heck of a lot to play for because it's the game. So we'll see what happens with that. I am taking the bye week over Michigan this week by 3.
Is that your stupid genius?
It is. Stupid genius upset pick of the week. We continue to be terrible at this.
I was close again. I've been close a lot.
You go first this week. I think I went first last week. By the way, this has to be at least a 5.5 point underdog. Okay. And if you get the pick right, you get however many points the spread was. I believe it is 7.5 to 7 because we've both picked one game correct.
My original pick, I changed it this morning. My original pick was going to be Arizona State over Kansas State.
Okay.
I have now officially changed it.
What have you taken?
Utah over number 20 Colorado. Is that what you took?
No.
But
somebody, for the love of God, keep Colorado out of the playoff, please.
I don't think they're going to make the playoff. They've already got 2 losses.
That Big 12 though is wide open.
I know.
The Big 12 is wide open. BYU keeps somehow BYU is the Mormon Miami.
The Utes were right there.
The Mormon Miami keeps getting away with this stuff. I don't know. Oklahoma State, now Utah.
Yeah.
I mean, congratulations to whoever gets to play BYU in the playoff. I am taking a team I don't really believe in, but the spread was just too good not to take a swing and try and bury you for good.
I know what this might be.
Mizzou.
Okay.
Missouri is somehow ranked in the top 25 still.
Yep. 24, right?
They were 24 in the college football playoff ranking. Their head coach keeps talking about how they're still making a playoff run.
The big win kept them in the playoffs.
It doesn't. I don't think this is a good team, but they are 13.5 point underdogs to South Carolina. And I think South Carolina is a fun team. I think South Carolina will win that game, but I'm going to take a ranked team at 13.5. I could end stupid genius right now if I get that, if that hits. So I'll take Mizzou 13.5 point underdogs to South Carolina. One more thing that I wanted to mention is just kind of the playoffs as a whole here, because we mentioned Colorado. The Big 12 remains wide open.
Yeah.
Colorado could not only make the Big 12 championship game, Colorado could have a first round bye in the playoff.
Which is insane. Could you imagine prime time in the playoffs?
I can't.
You know that deep down I still love them.
I know
but they burned me all last season, and so I'm trying to reverse it.
Here's what I'll say. My goal at this point in the season for Michigan is, one, obviously beat Ohio State. Number two, this season for Michigan is a lot more palatable if Michigan's coming off a national title and Ohio State doesn't get one. I feel a lot better. I feel a lot better about life in general if you guys can't win a national title this year with that roster. So I'm trying to think through the playoffs and going, how does this become the most difficult path imaginable? And I'll tell you what, if I've got either you guys playing BYU or Colorado, I'd rather probably see it play Colorado.
I'm fine with either of those.
What I'd rather do is have you lose to Indiana here in a couple weeks and not even go.
I hope don't happen.
You had posited this question. It was one of the wheel route options, and I want to end with this.
Which?
Go ahead.
Which
you
two-loss team do you think has the best chance? Because honestly, I was surprised that Georgia fell this weekend. I thought Ole Miss had a chance to make it interesting, but I thought at the end of the day, if you would have asked me 10 times out of 10 times, I would have picked Georgia for every single one of those.
It'll be curious to see where the College Football Playoff Committee puts Georgia on Tuesday night, where they put Miami on Tuesday night. Mm-hmm. And frankly, I'm curious where they put Indiana.
Bama.
But I think that's the answer. I think it's the answer because Alabama looks really, really
Jalen Milroe
trash LSU at home at night.
What's weird?
Brian Kelly has not lost in Baton Rouge at night yet. Until now.
I was trying to explain to Laurel, my wife, this weekend, like how weird of a college football weekend it was because it looked like a great slate of games. And I guess if you look at it, it was fun.
You could find games that were good.
Like the Michigan-Indiana game, if you weren't a fan of either team, was a fun game to watch because it was close, it was competitive. But I'm looking at this and I'm going, Georgia Ole Miss wasn't really close. Alabama LSU, where they had game day, wasn't really even close. Penn State Washington was an absolute blowout.
Nevada Boise State was okay.
Was fine. But you're looking at all these games that you thought, okay, Ole Miss and Georgia is going to be an amazing game. Yeah. Alabama LSU is going to be an amazing game. Penn State under the lights against Washington, they're going to be on upset alert. An amazing game to watch.
Not a lot.
And they were just snooze fest.
I think Georgia Ole Miss though was good, but again, I wasn't even really splitting time. I was over on the Michigan game, and so I think for two lost teams, I think it's got to be Alabama because tell me a team that you want. I mean,
I don't want to play Jalen Milroe,
and that's the thing. Like, if there's a team you don't want to play right now, it's Jalen Milroe, right?
Yeah, it's whatever team he's on.
You would rather play Miami with Cam Ward. Mm-hmm. You'd rather play Georgia at this point. I don't think anybody wants a piece of Alabama, and so that's where it gets real interesting for some of the for one of these teams that ends up with a bye. If Alabama slips into this, Alabama slips into the playoff as a 10 seed.
Oh man.
Congratulations to absolutely nobody in their path. Right. I think Alabama's got to be there. And I mean, there's not, I'm trying to think of another answer.
Was Alabama.
And that's gotta be it. That's gotta be it. And again, that's where I'm going. All right. How can we set Ohio State up in such a way that they have to play Alabama in the second round of the playoff? That would be great. I welcome that. Again, I would rather you guys not make it at all. That'd be cool.
I think you're going to be disappointed.
At RivalPod on social media, subscribe in the Varsity Network app or wherever you're listening to your podcast right now. And you can support the podcast at rivalpod.com.
The Rivalry is a production of River Radio Ministries. Want live updates from the show? Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at RivalPod. To learn how to support the show, shop our merch, and read our blogs, visit rivalpod.com. Make sure to follow us wherever you're listening now. And if you like what you're hearing, tell a friend so they can listen too.